Chapter Kong on another side. Nguyen Ho had been waiting for news. And on the table lay the imperial edict that decided the life and death of Hoang Hoi and the entire Hoang clan of Yen district. This matter carried immense danger. If it failed, the ensuing chain reaction would be difficult for anyone to predict. The Hall of Death. The candlelight was about to flicker out. The female official, who had been standing behind holding a lamp, immediately led several palace attendants forward. They quickly relit the lamps and torches, then returned to their original positions, hands clasped before their abdomens. Nowhere else could one feel the strict rules and solemn atmosphere as intensely as in the imperial court. It seemed as if everyone here was bound by invisible threads, like chess pieces fixed within their squares, unable to move. Only one person could transcend this. Vong Nhu walked in from outside the palace. He strode across the perfectly aligned tiles, approaching the person kneeling below. Nguyen Ho looked up from behind his desk and asked, "How did it go?" Actually, Nguyen Ho already knew the outcome, because Vong Nu's face was wreathed in a smile. With this success, he seemed even happier than the Son of Heaven himself. A glint flashed in Nguyen Ho's eyes. He saw not only Vong Nu's smile but also what lay hidden behind it. He saw through this person's inner character. Looking at this man's inner character, he reveres me, fears me, is absolutely loyal, but dares not harbor the slightest thought of resisting my will. Previously, Nguyen Ho had only seen the two words, loyal. Upon receiving this news, it seemed to have deeply shaken this chief eunuch who had always been close to Nguyen Ho. His mind was greatly impacted, and his reverence and awe for the Son of Heaven, Nguyen Ho, intensified, making him even more meticulous and cautious. "Congratulations, Your Majesty." The smile on Vong Nu's face was mostly for flattery, but at this moment, only he knew the extent of the fear and tension in his heart. This was the Hoang clan of Yen district, once a great aristocratic family that could control land ownership in the West City. Yet they had collapsed overnight? Moreover, it was by the most violent and direct means. However, he hadn't finished speaking. Nguyen Ho's eyes narrowed slightly. In an instant, Vong Nhu understood something. He was too tense and had almost misspoken. He immediately knelt on the ground, wiped all traces of a smile from his face, and said with trepidation, "Your Majesty, the Yen district magistrate Hoang Diem plotted a rebellion. General Yuan, upon receiving the news, immediately led troops to quell the revolt. The rebel leader has now been executed, and several hundred sets of armor, crossbows, were found at the Hoang estate." Nguyen Ho nodded slightly. "Yuan Chongwu is still dependable," Vong Nhu hurriedly said. "This is all due to Your Majesty's discerning eye." Nguyen Ho, having received confirmed news, knew Hoang Hoi deserved death. He rose from behind the desk. He walked past the candlelight, his shadow cast by the flame stretching longer and longer, appearing larger and larger, almost engulfing half the hall. And Vong Nhu, kneeling on the ground, immediately adjusted his posture, turning to kneel in the direction Nguyen Ho was walking. Suddenly, Nguyen Ho stopped. "Why is there sweat on your forehead?" Vong Nhu was so frightened that more sweat broke out. He pressed his head close to the ground, as if trying to hide it. "This servant rushed here upon receiving the news, so I broke out in a little sweat." Vong Nhu naturally didn't dare say it was because he was frightened by the Son of Heaven. "Nguyen Ho, wipe it." Vong Nhu quickly raised his hand and wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. But as soon as he finished, even more sweat beaded up. But at this moment, the Son of Heaven had already stepped out of the door, followed by a large retinue of palace attendants and eunuchs. Vong Nhu, kneeling on the ground, heard the last few sentences. "The edict on the table is written. Arrest the man. It's nothing. Don't disturb me." Nguyen Ho went to sleep. Vong Nhu, his body limp, stood up. He approached the imperial desk to examine it and saw the tragic fate of Hoang Hoi and the Hoang clan. In the end, Hoang Hoi, who was like a great mountain in everyone's eyes, before the Son of Heaven, he was only worth a single sentence. "It's nothing. Don't disturb me." West side of West Capital City. Hoang Hui's mansion. The candle on the sparrow-shaped bronze lampstand had burned down. Chancellor Hoang Hoi had risen early. Behind a chicken yellow brocade screen, he was being helped into his official robes by a large group of concubines and servants. The silhouettes of Hoang Hoi and his concubines appeared behind the screen, while in front of it, maid servants and house attendants stood in rows. In this room alone, countless people were serving him. Today, I must prevent that Yuwen Chongwu from entering the capital to report. I cannot stand by and watch this succeed. But, what reason should I find? The Son of Heaven thinks he can get away with ignoring the remonstrance of all civil and military officials. How naive. Even at this point, he was still thinking about how to turn the tables. Suddenly, a servant rushed in, flustered, and prostrated himself on the ground. Hoang Hoi frowned, a look of anger on his face, and scolded, "What is it? Rushing in like this? What kind of decorum is this? Drag him out." 20 strokes of the cane. The servant's face turned pale, and he pointed outside, saying, "Outside, outside." Hoang Hoi's face showed only disgust. He said to the person beside him, quote, "This lowly dog-like thing. Drag him out." Hoang Hoi didn't bother asking for the reason. He only wanted to re-establish order and authority. 20 strokes were enough to beat someone to death. After all, it was just a house servant. A lowly creature not even as good as a dog, if he was beaten to death. So be it. However, just as he finished speaking, a group of people with an oppressive presence entered from outside, passing through the inner courtyard, around the painted corridor, and directly into the room. Chief Censor Cao Jian led the way, holding an imperial edict of yellow silk as he stepped over the threshold. Behind him were 16 imperial guards in golden armor, their hands on the hilts of their sabers. The sound of their armor plates rubbing against each other made everyone stare wide-eyed in terror. When the imperial edict was unfurled, this chief censor used considerable force, even producing a faint sound of tearing fabric. Quote, Chancellor Hoang Hoi, holding the post of Commissioner of Secret Affairs, entrusted with the heavy responsibility of Prime Minister, dared to collude with border commanderies, secretly plotting rebellion. Cao Jian's voice resonated in the main hall of 5 bays and 9 ridges. This special honor of announcing the edict, which originally belonged to the Secretariat drafter, was now performed by the chief censor himself. This was inherently the most dangerous signal. What? Hoang Hoi, still in his purple robe with a jade belt, felt the golden fish pouch at his waist tremble slightly. At this moment, he was completely at a loss, his face filled with bewilderment. Just as he reached out to receive the edict, Cao Jian suddenly raised his voice. The edict has arrived. The condemned official must remove his hat and cut his hair. The captain, clad in golden armor and wearing ox-hide boots, stomped heavily on the green floor tiles. 2 guards with iron shoulder protectors immediately seized Hoang Hoi's shoulders. Another ripped off the 7-beamed scholar's hat from his head and then snatched the golden fish pouch from his waist. The golden hat fell to the ground with a clang, causing the concubines peeking from behind the screen to let out stifled cries of fear. Outside in the courtyard, soldiers were breaking down the west gate of the Hoang mansion. At the end of the edict, the imperial vermilion brush had fee, where denounced, "Arrest immediately," causing these imperial guards to show no restraint in kicking down the screen wall at the gate, which was painted with a shaji, and tying up everyone in Hoang Hoi's household. Some strong family retainers tried to resist but were whipped across the face with iron chains by the soldiers. Fresh blood splattering onto the green camphor silk curtains hanging between the corridor pillars. Regaining his senses, Hoang Hoi suddenly remembered the steward he had sent back to Yen district. If things succeeded there, turning the situation around was not impossible. Hoang Hoi, this chancellor of extremely high status, was now utterly disheveled, completely devoid of his former prestige. But even so, he held his head high and puffed out his chest, wanting to maintain his arrogance. He was the head of the Hoang clan of Yen district. He still had an ace up his sleeve, but at this moment, Chief Censor Cao Jian seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Yen District Magistrate Hoang Diem plotted a rebellion and has been executed. That sentence struck Hoang Hoi like a bolt of lightning. Even if one committed heinous crimes, even if one truly plotted rebellion and colluded with border commanderies to stir up trouble, death was not necessarily certain. But without the clan's power, without soldiers, having lost the foundation of Yen District, then death was truly inevitable. The arrogant expression on Hoang Hoi's face finally crumbled. He wailed, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, how could you be so ruthless? My Hoang family shed blood for your great Shang, I Hoang Hoi." Once followed the late emperor. But the gold-armored warrior beside him directly kicked him to the ground, stopping his wailing. "Lowly dog-like thing, take him away." Hoang Hoi absolutely never expected. The one being dragged away like a dog was not his household servant, but himself. You are listening to audiobooks at Great Dragon Audio Channel. Up next is Demon Emperor Episode Tam. Chapter Mo Nguyen Ho drifted off to sleep. The entire western capital was trembling. At the very moment he, the fierce tiger, began to snore. When facing life and death crises, some news travels exceptionally fast. In those ordinary days, the dukes and high officials in the imperial court, who were usually like clay statues, suddenly became extremely sensitive, their movements incomparably swifter, rushing back and forth everywhere. The political winds in the court also underwent a drastic change immediately. In the past, Duke Hoang's mansion was sparsely visited, but today, Minister Tran's residence was bustling with noise. Is the Hoang family done for? Just like that, they're done? They're truly finished. I heard Hoang Hoi, driven to desperation, wrote a letter ordering Hoang Diem to rebel. Who would have thought that the net of heaven is vast, though its meshes are wide? It's hard to escape, and General Yuwen discovered it. The celestial troops arrived, and in an instant, they were reduced to ashes. This General Yuwen is truly capable. His Majesty knows how to use people. Perhaps he truly values this position of Governor General of the Western barbarian righteous followers. Since he could pacify the Hoang clan, he can naturally eliminate those Huan Shou Man barbarians. Now, all the civil and military officials of the court, regarding Nguyen Ho, this son of heaven, they had recently secretly cursed him quite a bit. But after cursing, they couldn't help but acknowledge his methods and decisiveness. Some more progressive individuals, on the other hand, endlessly praised Nguyen Ho's recent actions, saying he had the makings of an enlightened ruler. Even regarding Nguyen Ho's arrest of Hoang Hoi, some people offered excessive praise. His Majesty, truly a virtuous one. Perhaps even Nguyen Ho himself didn't expect that his virtue and conduct, such as they were, would be praised as virtuous. Could it be because he had abstained from alcohol for the past 2 days? However, the virtue of the Son of Heaven is entirely different from the virtue of an ordinary man. The Son of Heaven who can rule the people, employ talented individuals, stabilize the court, and control the situation. That is virtue in the eyes of the world. Meanwhile, on the other side, Hoang Hoi's faction, upon waking up early in the morning, felt the sky turn dark. The sky above them was still there, but the sky before their eyes had collapsed. In the tavern, a group of people gathered, wailing and clamoring loudly. Duke Hoang was too foolish. How did it come to this? How did it come to this? Why did he suddenly rebel? The evidence is so clear. The letters have all fallen into their hands. Duke Hoang will surely die this time. There's no doubt. If he dies, we'll be in deep trouble. Hoang Hoi was actually not dead yet, but in their words, he was already considered dead. They weren't crying for Hoang Hoi, but for their own fates. Hoang Hoi had been arrested. Would it be their turn next? Yesterday, everyone was happily discussing the future. Everyone thought they would have a good tomorrow. Yet, as soon as morning came, they discovered it seemed they wouldn't even make it through tonight, let alone see tomorrow. However, the Son of Heaven imprisoned Hoang Hoi and arrested the entire Hoang family. But they waited and waited. Yet from beginning to end, they saw no order regarding how to deal with those belonging to his faction. The more the crowd waited, the more panicked they became. The more they waited, the more frightened they grew. At this very moment, they finally understood the feelings of Prime Minister Nguyen Ho's faction in the past. Finally, someone couldn't bear it anymore, waved their hand, and shouted loudly. It wasn't a cry of our kings, nobles, generals, and ministers born into their station, but rather righteous and eloquent words stating, "Let's go. We will kneel before the vermilion bird gate to confess our sins. His Majesty is a sagacious son of heaven. He certainly knows we didn't collude with Nguyen Ho. We are guilty, but it was all because we were deceived and misled by that traitor Nguyen Ho." The crowd was extremely frightened and hurriedly ran towards the foot of the imperial city wall. But when the crowd arrived to see, someone had been quicker than them, already kneeling before the palace gate. And it was someone they absolutely couldn't have expected. The crowd looked closely. An elder with a dignified and refined appearance, seemingly possessing an immortal's air, was at this moment trembling and kneeling beneath the large, red-painted gate. It was Li Hongdao. The crowd was terrified and aghast, feeling completely baffled, and exclaimed in astonishment, "Duke Li, what are you doing here?" He wasn't part of Nguyen Ho's faction. One could even say he was opposed to Nguyen Ho. It was only because the Son of Heaven was too overbearing that the two didn't clash. Moreover, Li Hongdao had no particular strengths, but his courage was especially small. Every time a critical moment of danger arrived, this elder would immediately kneel. Several great matters had failed in his hands consecutively, causing Nguyen Ho and his faction to look down on him immensely. Only now, looking back, this cowardice and weakness of Li Hongdao had become an advantage. Li Hongdao knelt before the palace gate, holding a memorial in his hands, his face pale, clearly terrified. In others' eyes, he and Nguyen Ho had no connection whatsoever. But in Li Hongdao's eyes, it was not so. At the crack of dawn, he had just woken up, been served sweet dew water by a concubine to rinse his mouth. When he heard the news that Nguyen Ho's entire family had been arrested, he was so frightened he knocked over the bronze basin. What? This elder was scared stiff. In Li Hongdao's eyes, not long ago, Nguyen Ho had confronted His Majesty, vying for the position of Governor-General of the Western Barbarian righteous followers, and in an instant, the entire Nguyen family was arrested. This matter, he too had engaged in. Only he had admitted his mistake in the end. Thinking back at this moment, how could Li Hongdao not be scared out of his wits? The emperor wanted to kill Nguyen Ho's entire family. Would he kill him next? So, Li Hongdao finished writing the memorial early in the morning, instructed his entire household of over 10 wives and concubines on his funeral arrangements, and then rushed to kneel before the palace gate. Unfortunately, there was no response from the palace from beginning to end. He only felt his spirits sinking continuously, as if falling into the Avicii hell. They, of course, did not know. It was because the Son of Heaven had drifted off to sleep. The bedchamber. Nguyen Ho had just woken up when Wang Ru found the right opportunity to approach, replacing the group of eunuchs and palace maids beside him to comb the Son of Heaven's hair. Nguyen Ho looked at Wang Ru and knew he had something to report. Have they all been captured? Wang Ru nodded. All have been captured, not a single one escaped. Nguyen Ho was not surprised at all. At this stage, what more could that Nguyen Ho struggle with? However, at this moment, Wang Ru quietly approached, hesitating to speak. Nguyen Ho saw through it. Speak. Wang Ru immediately presented an item, holding it high above his head. Your Majesty, this is a memorial of confession. Nguyen Ho glanced at Wang Ru, not even looking at the memorial, and asked directly, whose is it? Nguyen Ho's? Can he still submit a memorial? Things having reached this point, Nguyen Ho actually no longer cared much about Nguyen Ho, but was contemplating the next steps. Nguyen Ho must die. Not only must he die, but the court officials must also determine his crimes. And then he must be killed openly and justly. And the remaining members of the Nguyen clan would also be sentenced one by one. Those deserving death would be killed. Those deserving exile would be exiled. And those whose property should be confiscated and who should be enslaved would be sold as slaves. These matters would naturally be handled by officials skilled at anticipating the emperor's desires. They would surely handle them properly. Pleasing the Son of Heaven. Why would the Son of Heaven need to be involved? But the subservient eunuch said, "It's from Duke Li. He is currently kneeling outside the Vermilion Bird Gate." Nguyen Ho frowned. Then his brow quickly relaxed. He instantly understood something. Killing the chicken to scare the monkeys. Nguyen Ho was wary of Hoang Hoi. But towards Li Hongdao, this father-in-law, Nguyen Ho had only one thing to say. Quote, "My imperial father-in-law, truly incompetent and muddle-headed. With such little skill, and that much courage, how dare he join the gambling table? Even if he did join the gambling table, he could only end up served as a dish." Wang Ru didn't understand these words from the Son of Heaven, but he could roughly grasp the meaning. However, he understood better that since the Son of Heaven said this in a teasing tone, Li Hongdao would probably not face any major trouble. Indeed, Nguyen Ho took Li Hongdao's confession memorial, glanced through it a few times, and said, "Not only is his daughter beautiful, but this memorial is also very well written." Nguyen Ho tossed the memorial back, and Wang Ru immediately caught it carefully. Nguyen Ho, not profound enough. Tell him to go back and rewrite it. Wang Ru, this slave will immediately have someone return it. This dim-witted father-in-law, I must make him remember this for a long time, so he doesn't do such foolish things again. Not knowing his place, not knowing his status, Nguyen Ho passed through thresholds and curtains, slowly approaching the divine mirror left by the Yellow Emperor, like a divine being passing through the palace. Then his figure flickered slightly, and he actually stepped directly into that divine mirror. "Respectfully welcome your majesty." In the painting on the wall, a celestial realm, a wondrous land, 33 celestial maidens welcomed him. Nguyen Ho was like the celestial emperor descending to the Shao Palace. Nguyen Ho came here because Miao Shang, the celestial maiden, had told him she had managed to manifest her first Sheji god. Sheji god. At this very moment, Nguyen Ho once again recalled how Miao Shang, the celestial maiden, called this she god, which was also the earth god. You are listening to the story Demon Emperor on the Great Dragon audio channel chapter High Above. Celestial maiden Ju Hong was already waiting for Nguyen Ho. The moment Nguyen Ho ascended, celestial maiden Ju Hong immediately stood up and went forward to greet him, smiling and congratulating him. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Now that this deep-seated trouble has been eliminated, and the obstructing evil influence cleared away, next you will surely be able to eradicate the external worries as well." Compared to Nguyen Ho, this Son of Heaven, even when surrounded layer upon layer by tigers and wolves, could still rest his head on a sword and sleep soundly. Snoring away, his composure was truly immense. Celestial maiden Ju Hong was even more concerned about Nguyen Ho's grand ambitions of hegemony and his safety than he himself was. When he slept, she would dispatch celestial maidens to guard and protect him day and night. Fearing that his very head might be taken by someone, Nguyen Ho laughed and said, "How could Hoang Hoi be considered an internal threat or any kind of evil influence? The truly formidable figures are those behind him. Celestial maiden Ju Hong, Your Majesty is wise and divinely martial. Your great fortune reaches the heavens. A figure like Hoang Hoi is nothing worth mentioning." Although she said so, if this Hoang Hoi were truly so easy to eliminate, why didn't the late emperor get rid of him? Why would Nguyen Han still have to rely on and be wary of him? Celestial maiden Ju Hong's mouth uttered flattery, her face beaming with joy. But at this moment, she, in truth, understood the situation perfectly clearly. Having finished discussing Hoang Hoi, this time, after pacifying the Hoang clan, the significant achievements gained were also displayed. Celestial maiden Ju Hong pulled Nguyen Ho to sit down with her, then issued a command, "Community God True Dat, come quickly and pay respects to His Majesty." Nguyen Ho looked down. He then saw, before the palace doors, 2 female rakshasas clad in golden armor and holding golden hooks. Slowly lifting the pearl curtain, his gaze passed through the palace entrance, along the golden steps, looking down into the depths. A yaksha, flying along the stairs at a low celestial level, led the way, while several divine generals closely guarded an elder who approached. The elder had white hair and a white beard, with winding wrinkles between his eyebrows. He wore a brownish gold brocade robe, its hem and sleeves subtly embroidered with patterns of the 5 grains. As he walked, it swayed, seeming to release a pure fragrance of wheat. In his hand, he held a wooden staff, its segments like a coiled dragon. A red lacquered gourd hung from the staff's head, and with a slight movement, the sound of gurgling water could be heard. Nguyen Ho looked at the old man, knowing this was the new community god transformed from a ghostly entity by divine secret arts. As for the original community god of the Hoang estate in Yen County, his whereabouts were unknown. Perhaps he had become nourishment for this current community god. Nguyen Ho's gaze swept over the rakshasas at the palace entrance and the yaksha in the sky. Divine generals, ghost soldiers, yakshas, rakshasas. These were the divine secret arts that Celestial Maiden Ju Hong, in her capacity as a divine master, possessed, enabling her to refine ordinary souls into ghostly deities for her use. Now, she could transform yet another type of deity of the divine path. Moreover, the previous types couldn't truly be called anything significant, they were still merely ghosts. But this community god spirit was a true deity. The community god spirit entered the hall. Celestial Maiden Ju Hong immediately tilted her head and spoke to Nguyen Ho about the origin of this deity. When this person was alive, he was a respected village elder in Yen County, named True Dat, simply because he defended the villagers. He offended that Hoang family and was consequently killed. The common people there, grateful for his righteousness, secretly set up a spirit tablet for him, preventing him from becoming a lonely, wandering ghost. Celestial Maiden Ju Hong changed her tone, recounting how she had discovered him, and then how she had transformed him from a ghost into a god. I used the magical arts of the community god spirit to condense the incense and worship offerings of the living beings there, enabling him to transform from a ghost into a god. From then on, he could be considered to have a name in the divine path. Henceforth, he can also be considered to have his name spread between heaven and earth. Able to enjoy the incense offerings of a region, as long as the local populace still remembers him, he will firmly hold this divine position for another day. Ordinary people cannot become true deities, only those who, while alive, left behind a great reputation, whether good or evil, at least left a deep impression on the hearts of the local populace. Only after death can they become gods. It's just that this god was probably not quite the same as when he was alive. A deity formed from the incense and worshipful thoughts of the populace would naturally have differences from his original self. But Nguyen Ho was not this ghostly deity. After hearing Celestial Maiden Ju Hong speak, he only felt that this community god was indeed exceedingly rare, each one having to be a figure renowned in their region to achieve such a status. In his heart, he also grew more expectant. After Celestial Maiden Ju Hong finished introducing this deity to Nguyen Ho, her voice then carried a solemn aura as she spoke to community god True Dat below. Henceforth, His Majesty is your true divine master, your imperial lord in the mortal realm. You must obey His Majesty's edicts, and absolutely must not defy them. Do you understand? This community god spirit immediately kowtowed repeatedly in gratitude, while speaking loudly to Nguyen Ho, paying respects to the imperial lord. Nguyen Ho stood up and walked down. There was a hint of curiosity in his eyes as he looked at the community god. But he did not know how intense the majestic killing aura upon him was today. This little old man, kneeling on the ground, could not perceive the curiosity and scrutiny in the Son of Heaven's eyes. He only felt as if a fierce deity, resembling a dragon or a tiger, was circling him, instantly becoming so frightened that his back tensed up. Quote, I have long heard it said, Nguyen Ho began, that when celestial immortals descend to the mortal world, they consult the local earth god. It can be seen that although this earth god is minor, he has extraordinary aspects. Even celestial immortals from above must seek your aid. Tell me a little, you, this earth god, What divine powers do you possess? This community god spirit heard the voice and hurriedly kowtowed again, saying, Your Majesty is the greatest celestial immortal in the heavens. How could this little old man dare to trouble your Majesty by having you personally inquire? This little old man possesses only one divine power, once a month. I can pass through the Guishu beneath the earth to deliver souls from the netherworld to the Divine Master's divine realm. If your Majesty has matters to inquire about, you can also use this method, issuing an edict to summon this little old man. However, besides this, the Divine Master can also bestow one or two wondrous abilities upon this little old man, which can also be utilized. Nguyen Ho was inwardly pleased. This point alone demonstrated the importance of this community god. The divine path naturally valued his ability to deliver souls. This was like appointing officials to local areas to collect taxes, allowing for the continuous extraction of power and resources from the locality. As for Nguyen Ho, what he valued was, whether through this method, couldn't he learn about some of the events occurring in that place? At critical moments, summoning the local earth god, one could learn about some of the situations happening there. But this kind of matter could only be carried out in court territories completely under one's control. In other places, how could they allow you to establish a temple for this earth god? The local magnates and rural gentry in those places, and the common people there, all had their own deities to worship. Moreover, if someone were to attack, they would likely destroy your temple first thing. However, regarding this situation of gathering intelligence from the outside, Nguyen Ho also had other methods prepared. After finishing his questions, Nguyen Ho once again returned to the high seat, sat down, and observed everything below. Celestial Maiden Ju Hong then rose at the opportune moment and spoke to community god spirit True Dat. I am a god of the incense path, so I shall also bestow upon you a wondrous ability of the incense path. Having spoken, Celestial Maiden Ju Hong waved her hand. Go! 3 streams of light descended, and 3 incense sticks immediately appeared in the earth god's hands. Celestial Maiden Ju Hong said, Henceforth, you can use incense to communicate with the mortal world. You can also make mortals hear you speak, and even send dreams to mortals. Community god spirit True Dat kowtowed in thanks, many thanks. Divine Master. Immediately after, Goddess Bok Ko stepped out from behind Nguyen Ho. She too similarly waved out a streak of light and said softly, You can find the skeletal remains of an old horse that died rigidly. Refine it into a ghost horse, and it will heed your commands. The earth god was overjoyed. He did not know who this white-robed goddess before him was. But since she could bestow magical arts, she must at least be a divine master of great background. At the very least, she was a great deity worshipped by a national-level power comparable to a regional hegemon. He directly exclaimed, Thank you, your ladyship. Finally, it was Nguyen Ho's turn. It was for him to decide this deity's place of residence. Although he was a community god, where he would serve as a community god naturally made a difference. But in reality, where else could this community god spirit True Dat go? He originated from Yen County and received the incense worship of the populace there. Leaving that place, he would be like rootless duckweed. But Celestial Maiden Ju Hong intentionally let him decide, implicitly indicating that he was the true master of these lands. Nguyen Ho, I ennoble you to Yen County, to serve as the earth god. The Son of Heaven's words were like gold and jade. His utterances seemed to contain the laws of heaven. At least in this region of Tai Tan, Nguyen Ho's words possessed such power. As soon as he spoke, the title of community god, from this moment, began to change, completely becoming earth god. Henceforth, this also became the designation of this deity. Chapter Ba. What Nguyen Ho hadn't expected was that the act of Enfa offing an earth god would yield results so quickly. He had originally thought this was a long-term national policy, even if future gains were to be seen. They should have been indirect and subtle. Who would have thought? The results came so swiftly. An immediate fulfillment. The earth god Zhao Yi, after assuming his post, performed his first act. He sent a dream to the guards of the Zhenji office. teaching them how to thoroughly investigate the Huang family. Dusk. The sun was setting. The twilight glow was as red as blood. A group of people hurriedly entered Yan County, each with a Zhenji office token hanging from their waists. At this moment, this place was still guarded by Yuqi Chongwu's troops. The Huang Manor was like a giant prison. However, the county seat already had a new county magistrate and officials from other factions. And nearby, other members of the Zhenji office were secretly monitoring. 3 factions converged, a complex mix of powers. Captain Li Ying, having just arrived, immediately felt a pressure as heavy as a mountain. This matter, I'm afraid, won't be easy. Currently, the Zhenji office was becoming increasingly established. The head was Commandant Zhu Jiako, of the 3rd official rank, also known as the Office Master. Before Li Ying came, he had met Office Master Zhu Jiako, who had emphasized the importance of this matter. This time, confiscating assets and inventorying the Huang clan in Yan County is not just about settling scores with the Huang clan, but more importantly, about gathering the necessary provisions and rewards for the upcoming Grand Army. Furthermore, Huang Yan has hidden the true household register of Yan County, which has not yet been found. You must find it. If this fails, I will go before His Majesty to plead guilty. As for you, Zhu Jiako stepped into the mud at his feet, splattering it onto Li Ying's face. Yet he dared not move, much less wipe it away. Quote, "You will offer up your own head. Don't make me come for it." Zhu Jiako, who was like a fawning dog before the Son of Heaven, was, in front of him, simply, at the very least, a howling celestial hound. Arresting Captain Li Ying felt uneasy from his first day. The 3 forces were at odds with each other. Undercurrents surged within Yan County, and he feared this mission of his was about to go terribly wrong. He vaguely felt that he might truly have to offer up his head. What the office master wants is simple. But this isn't a situation a mere captain like me can turn around. How can this be acceptable? He tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Fear and anxiety intertwined in his heart. Little did he know that at this very moment, within the divine mural realm in the capital, the Son of Heaven was uttering his golden words. Enfa offing a deity, I appoint you to that Yan County, to be the earth god. In the dead of night, he had just managed to fall asleep when a divine figure entered his dream. Calling his name, Li Ying, Li Ying. Li Ying jolted upright, but he didn't notice the surrounding misty fog. It seemed like he was still in his house. But in reality, he had stepped into that ethereal, misty land. Li Ying looked at the person and asked loudly, "Who are you?" The divine figure identified himself as the earth god of this place. Knowing that the envoy of the sacred Son of Heaven had arrived, he had come specifically to offer assistance. After speaking, that divine figure told arresting Captain Li Ying, "Near the county, there is the Liu family. This place holds the Huang clan's reserve granary. This Liu family is actually subordinate to the Huang family. In a house in the eastern part of the county town, gold and silver left by the Huang clan are hidden. And in the western capital, the Huang family has over 10 silk shops, along with iron mines, silver mines, and merchant caravans in other counties. Those lists are all hidden here. And the true household register of the Huang family that you seek is also in this place." Li Ying woke up and immediately led his men to the house in the eastern part of the city. Sure enough, he found what he was looking for. Chest after chest was brought out, spread across the courtyard. "It's out. It's here." Li Ying flipped through the ledgers. The wealth of this Huang clan truly exceeded his imagination. Not just limited to Yan County. The assets they secretly controlled even surpassed those of the Son of Heaven. On the other side, another objective office master Zhu Jiako had instructed for this mission was also completed. The household register has also been found. It's in this chest. In the past, Yan County Magistrate Huang Yan naturally had a household register in the Yamen. But that was a fake. For the superiors to see, the Huang family had a true household register, usually hidden away, unknown to others. Li Ying only felt that things had suddenly turned around. The changes so rapid that he himself was a little stunned. Finally, He could only exclaim in amazement. His Majesty is truly an immortal emperor from the heavens. Even the local deity of this Yan county calls him the sacred son of heaven. Hearing I had arrived, he immediately rushed to assist. Today, I have truly learned what it means to have divine assistance. Following the right person. Indeed, even the gods and Buddhas of the heavens are helping you. Li Ying closed the chest, immediately affixed seals, and ordered men to transport it by fast horse at once. Send it to the capital. Initially, Li Ying thought the divine dream message was a one-time event, and that such a fortuitous encounter would be hard to come by again. However, he didn't expect the earth god to enter his dreams again on the second day. This time, the other party came to report news related to the Huang manor, as well as some assets hidden by Huang clan members. For half a month straight, that earth god would report any discovery he made, even more diligently than him. A captain of the Zhenji office. Even some remnants of the Huang clan hiding elsewhere were found one after another. Gradually, Li Ying began to feel that something was a bit off. What kind of grudge does this earth god have with the Huang family? Imperial City. Forbidden Palace. Chest after chest was overturned. The ledgers inside taken out. At this moment, a group of people was checking and cross-referencing, calculating the quantities. Meanwhile, Nguyen Ho held a household register, flipping through it casually, while slowly walking through the long palace hall. Zhao Yi, this earth god, is truly a capable deity. It had to be said. Marvelous incense celestial maiden's choice of this Yan County earth god for Nguyen Ho was truly brilliant. In the past, he died at the hands of the Huang clan. Now, having become the local deity of Yan County, how could he not kick them while they were down? It wasn't just about not wanting to see the embers of the Huang clan reignite. He wanted to exterminate them completely. Nguyen Ho pondered this arrangement by marvelous incense celestial maiden, then continued to flip through the register in his hand. With this household register, anyone could easily take over the entirety of Yan County, and know exactly how much land Yan County had, and how much of it could be utilized. As for how to arrange the land in Yan County, Nguyen Ho had already thought it through. Before long, the inventory of the ledgers was completed. Wang Ru, overjoyed, prostrated himself before Nguyen Ho. Your Majesty, the necessities for this expedition are all sufficient, and there's even a surplus. One Huang family was enough to support Nguyen Ho in fighting a war with plenty to spare. Nguyen Ho nodded slightly and told Wang Ru to handle the subsequent matters well. Wang Ru happily accepted the order. And Nguyen Ho, these past few days, had been frequenting the martial training grounds both inside and outside the capital, observing the situation in the various barracks, and also inquiring about the conditions of the Imperial Guard soldiers in the camps. He visited each household, delivering rewards to each. It had to be said, most families of the Imperial Guard soldiers were not wealthy. Those with many members lived very impoverished lives. What is this? How can my soldiers live such days? Nguyen Ho casually mentioned the matter of Yan County. Speaking of wanting to reward those with merit, that Yan County is not bad. If any of you have the ability, then just take it. Nguyen Ho had actually prepared and thought carefully before coming. That Yan County was truly too close to the western capital. Leaving these prominent families around was, frankly, extremely dangerous. And Nguyen Ho was also prepared to start revising military regulations after this battle was fought. On the training ground, the atmosphere instantly became quiet. Then someone in the crowd spoke loudly. Is Your Majesty serious? That Yan County is all good land. Is Your Majesty willing to part with it? If it's true, then this time I go to Wu Prefecture. So what if I sell my life? Are you really going to grant it? Nguyen Ho laughed heartily. My imperial words are like gold and jade. How could I go back on them? He pointed at the people below. You are the sons and brothers who followed the late emperor into the western city together. How can I bear to see you live such days? Not just land, but beauties, official titles. What can I not bestow? In an instant, the eyes of everyone present change, transformed, as if becoming just like this wolfish tiger. Nguyen Ho, not only because the prestige of the Son of Heaven Nguyen Ho was growing deeper, His words carried great weight with them, but also because they remembered an example. Yuchi Chongwu, who didn't know, this person was about to become an admiral. The Son of Heaven's words would not only come true but would far exceed expectations. Nguyen Ho knew that land would encourage the officers and soldiers. But he himself still underestimated the extent of this encouragement. Not being a person of this era, it was difficult to understand people's craving for land. After the warm-up, from then on, Nguyen Ho had also completely finished his preparations for war. Reliable commanders, logistical supplies, troop morale. Waging war primarily depended on these three things. As for the rest, partly depended on intelligence, partly on the mandate of heaven. Nguyen Ho, clad in armor, returned to the palace. Just as he was removing his armor, an urgent report was delivered into the palace. Urgent report from the Wu Prefecture's Wuxi Patrol Inspectorate. Nguyen Ho. Read. The messenger, Chief Minister Chi Tang's Zhou Zan has abandoned his post and surrendered to the rebel leader Gong Tian. Nguyen Ho immediately stopped removing his armor, picked up his helmet, as if carrying a blood-soaked skull. Give it to me. As Nguyen Ho read, the killing intent in his eyes grew increasingly intense. He smelled the stench of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. You are listening to the story Demon Emperor on the Great Dragon audio channel chapter Bon Afternoon. Nguyen Ho summoned the messenger from Wu Prefecture. Not through others, but for a direct interrogation. Nguyen Ho stood in the right hall of the Grand Palace. The palace pillars rose in layers, and brocade curtains hung in cascading folds. Eunuchs and palace maids stood ramrod straight in dense formations, further highlighting the majesty of this Son of Heaven to its utmost limit. Controlling objects was not comparable to controlling people. Nothing could compare to controlling and commanding others, as it further demonstrated one's authority. And by observing the cautious and deferential demeanor of those eunuchs and palace maids, by looking at the solemn order within this grand hall, one could discern the prestige and control of a Son of Heaven. At this very moment, this messenger witnessed what heavenly might truly was. Tai Lang, a clerk from the Wuxi Patrol and Inspection Office, kowtows before your majesty. This was the first time the messenger had seen the Son of Heaven, and even his first time in the capital. At this moment, the magnificent palace hall alone was enough to overwhelm him. He spoke with a slight stutter, as if he had a speech impediment. In truth, the place where he knelt was outside the palace doors. He wasn't even allowed to truly enter. The Son of Heaven, Nguyen Ho, deep within the hall, did not look out, merely asking, "Speak, what is the situation in Wu Prefecture truly like?" The voice echoed in the hall, slowly traveling from the depths of the hall to the messenger's ears. To him, it was like a heavenly sound descending from the 9 layers of clouds. When your subordinate arrived, the assistant prefect had already summoned troops from various places. From this man, Nguyen Ho learned about the situation of the Wuxi Patrol and Inspection Office and the conditions there. The only truly usable forces there were the prefectural troops and the valiant shield soldiers. The man tribesmen summoned from other places were initially willing to exert themselves. After all, the Hone two-man tribe had clashed with them many times over the years. But after the Hak Exa Tan camp was destroyed, everyone in the camp, from top to bottom, was beheaded as a sacrifice to their gods, which intimidated quite a few people. Kung Thien of the Hone two-man tribe somehow acquired a large quantity of weapons and armor, causing them to suffer continuous defeats and retreats. These men then began to be unwilling to risk their lives. The situation also began to deteriorate sharply from this point. Nguyen Ho listened silently, occasionally asking for a few details. But even with such simple questions, the messenger answered while drenched in sweat. By the time the Son of Heaven finished asking, his entire body was soaked through with perspiration. The Son of Heaven said nothing, merely pondering in silence. Vong Niu watched the Son of Heaven's back for a moment, then subtly nodded to someone outside. A eunuch outside then led the messenger away, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. At dusk, Nguyen Ho summoned Chu Jiako of the Trin Tap Bureau. Unlike the messenger from Wu Prefecture earlier, Chu Jiako walked straight into the hall. approaching the Son of Heaven directly. Outside the hall, his face was as cold as iron. Inside the hall, his expression was as warm and pleasant as a spring breeze. He walked softly before the Son of Heaven and took out a secret dispatch. Your Majesty, this is Kung Tu's memorial regarding the situation in Daizong County and Kai Duong Pass. There is also a letter from Bui Nguyen Kiu to Chief Kung Thien. However, Kung Tu did not see the entire content, he only caught a glimpse of it. This is the portion he managed to copy. From the Trin Tap Bureau, Nguyen Ho learned about the situation on the Hon Tu man's side. It was also confirmed, the fall of Kai Duong Pass and the surrender of its defending general, Chu Dong, were connected to Bui Nguyen Kiu. Bui Nguyen Kiu had planted many spies and made arrangements within Nguyen Ho's faction. Chu Dong was one of them. Previously, Nguyen Ho had also colluded with him. Meanwhile, Nguyen Ho, through the Trin Tap Bureau, had also been continuously planting agents in Bui Nguyen Kiu's faction. Kung Tu was a crucial hidden asset, waiting for the right moment to be deployed. In this world, it was truly a case of, you are within me, and I am within you. You might think that battles are all flashing blades, gleaming swords, and charging iron cavalry, but in reality, before the two sides even resort to force, a brutal, clandestine slaughter has already begun. The eventual mobilization of troops is, in fact, either a decisive battle for victory after one side has meticulously calculated its moves, or a desperate, all-or-nothing gamble by one side. In the night, Nguyen Ho had just lain down when, for some reason, his thoughts turned to the Phi Do Tran Kai that had been dispatched to Vu Prefecture. It seems many days have passed without any news from it. Mulling it over, Nguyen Ho gradually drifted off to sleep. Not long after, the darkness before his eyes slowly transformed into mist. And then the mist dissipated. Nguyen Ho saw a large mountain, and a gorge with a river in the distance. Nguyen Ho had never been to this place, but based on the terrain, he could guess its location. Vu Mountain. As soon as the thought crossed his mind, the night brought a dream report. That Phi Do Tran Kai had indeed come to report to its master. The messenger from the Wuxi Patrol and Inspection Office helped Nguyen Ho understand the internal situation. Chu Jiako of the Trin Tap Bureau helped Nguyen Ho learn of the enemy's intelligence. However, the Phi Do Tran Kai could lift the true veil of mist, allowing Nguyen Ho to witness the state of affairs with his own eyes. Moreover, not only that, this Phi Do Tran Kai occasionally brought Nguyen Ho pleasant surprises, helping him find ways to solve difficult problems. The Tran Kai was different from the Tran Hun and Tran Fach that Nguyen Ho had chanced upon. Those Tran Hun and Tran Fach were like inanimate objects. But the Tran Kai was a fusion of the structure of the 3 Hun and 7 Po souls, giving rise to a wondrous, sentient entity. Most of the time, it didn't need Nguyen Ho's prompting, it knew what to do on its own. The last time, the Phi Do Tran Kai had helped Nguyen Ho quickly understand the current state of Vu Prefecture, and also helped him use the Trin Tap Bureau to infiltrate the Hon Tu man's inner circle. This time, Nguyen Ho didn't know what the Phi Do Tran Kai would report, and he felt a vague sense of anticipation. However, what he saw next was not good news at all. His vision swept past Vu Mountain, then entered a county town, precisely Daizong County, which had been occupied by the Hon Tu man. Nguyen Ho saw the Man tribesmen inside Daizong County. It was evident that these Man tribesmen were becoming more elite, and their weapons and armor were also significantly more numerous. Furthermore, they had begun to use the rivers to transport various supplies and provisions. The scene shifted again, to Kai Duong Pass. The sight here was even more alarming. The soldiers here were even more numerous, especially since the original defenders of Kai Duong Pass had now mixed with the rebel forces, further bolstering the rebels' strength and prestige. However, there were also hidden seeds of trouble. Among the soldiers guarding Kai Duong Pass, some were unwilling to surrender to the Man King Kung Thien. After all, who did Kung Thien think he was? Though he called himself the Man King, he was merely a man chieftain. At this moment, Nguyen Ho saw a group of bound soldiers being escorted to the foot of the city wall. A martial general with a fierce, leopard-browed and round-eyed appearance was glaring. This robust man must be Chu Dong. You refuse to submit? Chu Dong, you betrayed His Majesty. Aren't you afraid of dying without a burial place? I will now make sure you die without a burial place. Execute them. Kill. Chu Dong killed several men. His gaze swept over the others, seemingly suppressing the remaining dissenters. But one could also see intense resentment in their eyes, merely suppressed and not yet erupting. And this was the third scene Nguyen Ho witnessed. By now, the Phi Do Tran Kai had flown out of Vu Mountain. This is already Lang Prefecture. What met his eyes were convoys of boats heading towards this location, along with piled-up provisions being transported, and soldiers with weapons at the ready, awaiting orders. Lang Tay City. This place was the gateway to the Tay Tan region. These men were all elite troops of Bui Nguyen Kiu from Lang Prefecture. At this moment, they were all quietly converging on Lang Tay. This naturally meant they were preparing to deploy forces against the Tay Tan region. As expected, Nguyen Ho frowned in his dream. In fact, he had anticipated this, because of Chu Dong's betrayal. This was an extremely important pawn. He controlled Kai Duong Pass. This incredibly crucial pass, arguably the most important gateway to the Tay Tan region. Bui Nguyen Kiu using him at this juncture naturally meant he had made up his mind. The situation is indeed critical to the extreme. The Hon Tu man had thrown Vu Prefecture into chaos. Chu Dong had surrendered Kai Duong Pass. At this point, Bui Nguyen Kiu, whether he was using the Hon Tu man to continuously inflict losses on Nguyen Ho, controlling the situation from behind the scenes, and watching him head towards ruin, or he might decide on a life-or-death battle, fully revealing his ambitions, led his troops into Tay Tan, and with Nguyen Ho, this son of heaven of Dai Tin, gamble for the mandate of heaven. Next, Nguyen Ho would have to face a life-and-death situation. The vision circled Lang Tay City once more, then gradually faded into the dark night. The three preceding scenes, these were all images the Phi Do Tran Kai had seen several days ago, now relayed to Nguyen Ho through this dream. After seeing these things, Nguyen Ho had a deeper understanding of the critical situation. But what he was now more focused on and curious about was, where is this Phi Do Tran Kai now? And what is it doing? Nguyen Ho knew the situation was so critical that life and death hung in the balance. So, the Phi Do Tran Kai should also be aware of it. Chapter Nam. The black curtain dissolved. The image before my eyes suddenly became vivid, no longer hazy like a dream, but as if I were truly there. What struck my eyes was no longer the scene outside, but the interior of a government office. From this perspective, the flying head Tran ghost seemed to be lurking on the rafters. At this moment, Nguyen Ho, through the ghost's eyes, peered past the rafters, observing a group of people below, secretly scheming something. Lang Tan. Nguyen Ho saw the sign hanging at the back. The flying head Tran ghost had actually flown all the way here. This place was a strategic point in Lang Prefecture, governed by Bui Nguyen Kiu. The voices from below grew clearer, and Nguyen Ho finally understood what these people were discussing. A man in official robes stood beneath the sign, while another in military attire, leading several men, was trying his best to persuade him. Quote, "The Chu emperor values the military advisor so much, willing to promise the position of governor. What else is the military advisor worried about? Commander Liu, Grand Commandant Bui has treated me well. Currently, Bui Nguyen Kiu has moved his troops and horses to the west, leaving the interior vulnerable. This is a heaven-sent opportunity, not to be missed. Grand Commandant Bui is currently campaigning in the West City. If he succeeds, he can control West City, holding both West City and Lang Prefecture. Perhaps he could truly achieve something great, even if that Bui Nguyen Kiu succeeds. What does that have to do with you and me? Will he make the military advisor a governor? As long as the military advisor makes the decision, once the heavenly troops arrive, with internal cooperation and external support, Bui Nguyen Kiu will be reduced to ashes in an instant. In the west, Nguyen Ho's army was the heavenly troops. Here in the east, the heavens had changed. The Chu emperor's army was now the heavenly troops. Listening for a while, Nguyen Ho almost burst out laughing. Truly, traitors were everywhere. So, Bui Nguyen Kiu also had traitors within his ranks, plotting to sell him out in exchange for the governorship of a larger region. Indeed, in these times, treacherous officials and rebellious sons were truly everywhere, under whose command were there not a few with rebellious bones. Of the two men below, the one in official robes was the military advisor in Bui Nguyen Kiu's staff, while the other was the commander of Lang Tan. The two must have received an edict from the Chu emperor in the east. Perhaps a secret emissary from the other side was hidden in the adjacent hall at this very moment. Bui Nguyen Kiu and this Chu emperor could be said to have a blood feud as deep as the sea. His entire family had been slaughtered by the Chu emperor years ago, which was why he had brought Lang Prefecture to pledge allegiance to Great Shang. That was why Nguyen Ho had previously said it was the late emperor who had taken him in. And now, the Chu emperor, having somehow obtained this information, had sent secret emissaries to undermine Bui Nguyen Kiu. The situation on Nguyen Ho's side was critical. Feeling like patching the east wall only to find the west wall breached, this Great Shang was leaking from all sides. Looking at this Bui Nguyen Kiu, his situation was hardly better than Nguyen Ho's. Don't let his outward appearance of close surveillance fool you. If he couldn't turn the tide immediately, he might perish even faster than Nguyen Ho. In the main hall of the government office, the commander repeatedly tried to persuade, but the military advisor still hesitated. No, this cannot be rushed. Let me consider it further. Right now, the troops haven't even entered West City. If we make a move now, wouldn't you and I be the first to fall, dying without a burial place? This military advisor claimed Bui Nguyen Kiu treated him well, feigning some loyalty, but his words now immediately exposed him. What loyalty? It was merely the threat of soldiers nearby. Everyone wanted to eat the meat, not be the one beaten. Bui Nguyen Kiu's side indeed had significant problems, but now it seemed uncertain whether this problem would erupt. However, with this seed of disaster discovered by Nguyen Ho's flying head Tran ghost, the situation became entirely different. Tran, ghost, truly good. The saying, arming the enemy, was indeed true. This Tran ghost was truly the most capable assistant for a vicious tiger like him. The secret plotting in the government office ended, and the images transmitted by the flying head Tran ghost gradually ceased. West Capital City. Nguyen Ho opened his eyes and turned to stand up. Without him saying a word, palace attendants immediately approached and then lit the palace lanterns one by one. Before long, Vong Niu was kneeling at his feet. Summon Yuqi Chongwu to the capital. Vong Niu? Yes, he was finally going to fight a real battle. Nguyen Ho was so agitated he couldn't sleep all night. He felt his blood surging throughout his body. Under the silver moon, Nguyen Ho practiced his martial arts straight until dawn, only stopping when sweat blinded his eyes. It wasn't fear, but excitement and thirst. Nguyen Ho sat down, and 2 rows of eunuchs advanced to stand on either side. One of them stepped forward to drape a cloak over him. 2 palace attendants knelt on the ground, one on his left and one on his right, gently reaching into Nguyen Ho's robe to wipe his sweat. His freshly trained muscles were now as hard as refined steel. Nguyen Ho's hot breath fanned the face of the closely attending palace maid, making her feel a burning heat. With Nguyen Ho's breathing, the palace maid always felt that he was like a wild beast, capable of sinking its teeth into her delicate, fair neck at any moment, like a tiger pouncing on its prey. She dared not look Nguyen Ho directly in the eyes, her whole body tense. It seemed like fear, yet also like anticipation. The others said nothing. Only the eunuch beside him spoke with concern. Your Majesty, let's go back. The night wind is bone-chillingly cold. What if it harms the dragon body? Nguyen Ho didn't feel the night wind was bone-chillingly cold at all. He even wished it would blow stronger. One without supernatural powers, one whose physical constitution and blood qi were weak, not strong enough to unleash boundless ambition. would find it very difficult to comprehend the state of mind of a wolf and tiger-like ruler such as Nguyen Ho at this moment. One who carried sharp weapons would naturally have killing intent arise. Merely being a fatuous ruler no longer stimulated Nguyen Ho's excitement. Enslaving and controlling ordinary people also made Nguyen Ho feel it was beneath his notice. Only by dragging down the gods who had always been high and mighty from their pedestals, trampling all their dignity and prestige into the mud, slaughtering the bravest martial generals in the world, using irresistible force to completely shatter their self-perceived strength, seizing all the most beautiful things in the world, snatching them from the hands of thousand-year-old prestigious families and hereditary aristocratic clans, forcing those who were once lofty and unrivaled to kneel at his feet, driving and controlling the strongest, most sinister, and most cunning beings in this world, forcing them into submission. That moment, that was what could make a demon like Nguyen Ho feel exhilaration. And war was the most direct manifestation of this conquest and plunder. Unfortunately, I cannot go myself this time. However, Nguyen Ho was not in a hurry. Because he knew that this rebellion by Hon Tu Man was merely an appetizer. The truly formidable characters would appear next. He still wanted to accumulate strength, to seize the most powerful prize. At that time, that would be when the 9 provinces truly unfolded a mortal struggle. A life and death situation involving dragons and snakes. As soon as dawn broke, Yuchi Chongwu hurried to the palace for an audience. He was incredibly excited, although the person summoning him didn't say why the Son of Heaven summoned him. He had already guessed. Entering the palace, he couldn't wait to prostrate himself at the Son of Heaven's feet. Shouting loudly, "Your Majesty," he kowtowed forcefully, his head hitting the ground with a dull thud. He wanted to say something, but for a long time, he didn't know what to say. Finally, the Son of Heaven on the throne spoke for him first. "Your abilities, I know them best. I don't need you to say anything. I only need you to bring me the heads of the Hon Tu Man and the rebel leaders. And bring their entire clans, from top to bottom, to West Capital, so that everyone in West Capital can hear their wails and cries." Nguyen Ho's words were relatively direct, bloody, and extremely cruel, but Yuchi Chongwu, being a martial man, liked this directness. He understood the aspirations of those in the martial world. "Your subject will definitely not fail your Majesty's expectations." Yuchi Chongwu was moved to tears. He saw the Son of Heaven as profound and unfathomable, inspiring awe in him. At the same time, the other party was the one who had personally promoted him, elevating him to this position in a short time. And at this moment, the Son of Heaven showed such trust and understanding towards him. For Yuchi Chongwu, at this moment, only one thought remained: to serve the Son of Heaven with his very life. Afterward, Nguyen Ho discussed the dispatch of troops with Yuchi Chongwu and also handed over all the intelligence gathered by the investigation bureau to him. Seeing that intelligence, Yuchi Chongwu was even more astonished. Never mind the enemy's internal situation. Even the contents of the treacherous letters colluding with Bui Nguyen Kiu. The Son of Heaven knew everything. This time, Yuchi Chongwu's awe for the Son of Heaven deepened even further. You are listening to the story Demon Emperor on the Great Dragon audio channel Chapter Sao. It was an urgent matter. On the day Yuchi Chongwu set out for the expedition, before the main hall, Yuchi Chongwu, clad in resplendent armor, stood below the crimson steps. In his hands, he held a fish-shaped tally. While inside the hall, the attendant official presented the sacrificial blood of the 3 animals on a golden tray. The attendant official, using a cinnabar brush dipped in fresh blood, drew talismans on Yuchi Chongwu's hemp battle garment. This was the horse offering ceremony, conducted by the Court of Imperial Sacrifices. At the 3rd quarter of the Chen hour, the palace gates successively opened wide. Yuchi Chongwu advanced to within 7 paces of the imperial throne and prostrated himself before the Son of Heaven. Nguyen Ho gestured with his hand. The Minister of War then stepped out from the ranks, presenting a gilded bronze box. He carefully retrieved the black iron tiger tally from within and matched it with the fish-shaped tally Yuchi Chongwu carried on his chest. They fit perfectly. A eunuch unfurled an imperial edict on golden hemp paper and proclaimed the decree. The entire process was exceedingly solemn and reverent. Afterward, Yuchi Chongwu proceeded to the front of the Vermilion Bird Gate. The minister of the court of imperial stud personally held a golden battle axe adorned with white feathers. Standing beneath a five-colored command flag, Yuchi Chongwu, carrying his sword, ascended a chariot drawn by a green ox. The master of records smeared ram's blood on a drum, and the 800 black armored troops before the Vermilion Bird Gate sang the Wu Yi anthem in unison. To the beat of war drums, the citizens of West Capital also cheered loudly, simultaneously throwing copper coins onto the road, a custom known as road buying money. The sun's shadow shifted towards high noon. The Wu hour had arrived. It was also time to depart. Yuchi Chongwu received a gilded ceremonial saber presented by the army supervisor. This jewel-encrusted straight saber was not a true weapon but a ceremonial object. Yuchi Chongwu accepted it and entrusted it to the chief scribe of the march for safekeeping. On both sides of the Grand Avenue, musicians played the breaking the ranks music. Officers and soldiers of the 6 armies struck the ground thrice with the butts of their spears, shouting, "Long live!" The 12 city gates of West Capital simultaneously lit signal fires, sending columns of green smoke soaring straight into the sky. The Grand Army finally set forth, marching in vast, unending columns towards the distant horizon. Within the imperial city, though Nguyen Ho could not witness the scene, his gaze still followed the direction of the departing Grand Army. Regarding Yuchi Chongwu's expedition to annihilate the Huan Shou man, Nguyen Ho was not overly concerned. Firstly, the Imperial Guard, after undergoing a series of rectifications under his command, had become skilled in warfare and effective. Secondly, he had a clear understanding of the situation with the Huan Shou man. As things stood, the crucial factor, conversely, was not the Huan Shou man themselves, but rather the potential upheavals that could occur in their wake, and the changes that Yuchi Chongwu's re-establishment of the West Man Righteous Followers Prefecture might bring. Therefore, at this juncture, the most critical task for Nguyen Ho was to await further developments, maintain the initiative in the subsequent events, and be prepared to confront even greater dangers. Yuchi Chongwu had taken 5,000 imperial guards and was also preparing to consolidate the West Man Righteous Followers Prefecture, with an estimated total force of 20,000. Meanwhile, he himself, back here, needed a formidable force capable of decisively influencing the situation. Nguyen Ho stood motionless for a long while. Then, a eunuch approached and whispered a sentence to him. "Your Majesty, the palace steward from the Celestial Maiden's palace requests an audience." Nguyen Ho did not leave his position and directly summoned the palace steward from the Celestial Maiden's palace. When the palace steward arrived, he knelt, and his first sentence was, "Reporting to Your Majesty, the Lu Shou has been successfully refined." What Nguyen Ho needed had arrived. "Nguyen Ho? Where is it?" Palace steward. "It is currently at Phoenix Hoang Mountain and will arrive in a few days." Nguyen Ho went to the Celestial Maiden's palace once more, since it was situated right beside the imperial city. When Nguyen Ho arrived, it felt as though he was merely transitioning from one palace complex to another, seemingly without ever leaving the imperial city grounds. The donkey-head general and the divine Zhou army were refined through the divine powers of the goddess Bai Ko. The entire process was overseen by the palace steward and shamans of the Celestial Maiden's palace. In essence, the Celestial Maiden Miao Shang was responsible for all of this. Therefore, Nguyen Ho sought her out once more, passing through layers of white veils, like ascending tiers of cloud-like stairs. He arrived at the deepest sanctum. Before a mural veiled in swirling incense smoke, Nguyen Ho felt as if he stood before the main gate of a celestial palace. As he reached out to touch the mural, the world instantly whirled around him. Nguyen Ho transformed into the divine emperor immortal lord, treading a path where celestial maidens, divine generals, and heavenly soldiers welcomed him with bows. And he entered the majestic immortal palace depicted on the wall. A tea table was set on a perilous veranda clinging to a cliff face. While savoring tea, one could behold the scene of azure seas turning into mulberry fields, an extraordinary artistic conception. The celestial maiden knelt to one side. Preparing tea, Nguyen Ho walked over and sat down directly. He had always been direct. Now that the Zhou general is refined, the matter of the divine Zhou army must also be considered. I will still need to trouble you for your assistance. Celestial Maiden. The Celestial Maiden said, that exotic beast on Phoenix Hoang Mountain had its Dharma body sculpted using divine arts. A shrine has now been established for it, but it requires many years of worship to achieve its full potential. When that Lu Shou returns, someone must be found to form a blood contract with it for the endeavor to be successful. Even with the Lu Shou refined, it is merely the beginning. Forging the divine Zhou army also requires a great number of skilled horsemen and archers, which are hard to assemble in a short period. Your Majesty, this matter cannot be rushed. Indeed, after that Lu Shou was chosen by Nguyen Ho, a temple was erected for it on Phoenix Hoang Mountain, named the Temple of the Divine Zhou General, and the burial site of the former Lu Zi army was also bestowed the name, General's Tomb. Nguyen Ho stated, but time waits for no one. The Celestial Maiden discerned the urgency in Nguyen Ho's heart. Your Majesty is so anxious. Are you perhaps worried about the situation in Wu Prefecture? Nguyen Ho replied, rebellion in Wu Prefecture is not the main concern. I am worried about what will follow. The Celestial Maiden ceased her attempts to console him and instead directly summoned a key figure connected to the divine Zhou army. Bai Ko, as Miao Shang, the Celestial Maiden, called out. One figure from the groups of palace maiden-attired silhouettes standing on either side stepped forward. Nguyen Ho turned his gaze to Bai Ko. She, too, seemed to have become one of the Celestial Maidens. Clad entirely in white, however, her standing among them was apparently not high, as she lacked even the qualification to step to the forefront. Your Majesty. Bai County paid her respects and then stood behind Miao Shang, the Celestial Maiden, bowing her head as she explained the method of refining the Lu Shou. There are two methods. One is for the person to cut hair from their own head and feed it to that Lu Shou. In the future, that person will naturally acknowledge the Lu Shou as their master. The other method is to drink the heart's blood of the Lu Shou. By doing so, the person can then control and enslave it. Bai Ko's methods bore a tinge of Chang folklore. It was said that many among the Chang people believed a person's soul resided in the hair on the crown of their head. To cut hair from the crown and feed it to that Lu Shou was to offer one's own soul to that silver-headed donkey. Bai County also congratulated Nguyen Ho, stating that with a single glance, he had identified the silver-headed donkey with the greatest potential. This new Lu Shou possesses a pure bloodline. If trained appropriately, it might even be possible to reproduce the ancient exotic Shou breed. Nguyen Ho. The Shou, it appeared, was a type of ancient exotic beast. Bai Ko's methods were not without basis but had ancient origins and lineage. Yet, according to Bai Company, the Shou had not been seen for 1,000 years. And bringing it back into the world would be no simple feat. Nguyen Ho did not dwell on it further. It would be good if it came to pass. But he would not be anxious if it did not. Having grasped the details, Nguyen Ho prepared to depart. At this moment, Bai County brought up another matter. Your Majesty, this servant tried to contact the green-faced Chang, but there has been no reply. Reflecting on it now, it's possible that my temple and divine statue have both been destroyed. The destruction of Bai Ko's temple and statue was merely the surface. Nguyen Ho perceived deeper implications. That horse-faced deity had undoubtedly gone to Ya Prefecture, the territory occupied by the green-faced Chang. Moreover, it was highly likely that it had now infiltrated and gained control over this Chang tribe. On the outskirts of the capital, at the training arena of the Imperial Stud, Nguyen Ho once again saw the divine Zhou general being escorted back. The being was seated on a divine palanquin, its entire body clad in armor. Sitting cross-legged, it wore a specially crafted iron helmet that obscured its face. with only its pair of uncanny, demonic eyes visible. "Your Majesty, the divine Zhou general has been delivered." Nguyen Ho's side was already prepared. The palace steward from the celestial maiden's palace, who was to preside over the ceremony, stood ready behind him. After reciting incantations several times and burning 3 large incense sticks, several shamans from the celestial maiden's palace came forward to draw the heart's blood from that divine Zhou general. The entire procedure, though bloody, was not lethal. The so-called drawing of heart's blood merely involved making an incision on the divine Zhou general's body. Yet, during this process, that divine Zhou general emitted desperate, guttural screeches, "Ooh-ach-ooh-ach." According to ancient Chang customs, a demonic creature consuming hair from the crown of a person's head was tantamount to devouring that person's soul. And a person drinking the heart's blood of such a creature, according to certain legends and interpretations, also symbolized the creature's soul being consumed by the person. Since Nguyen Ho wished to control this cavalry unit with its extraordinary divine powers, he would certainly not delegate this crucial power to someone else. He prepared to swallow the soul himself, to firmly grasp this divine Zhou army in his own hands. It was merely a slight pity for this sapient spiritual creature. However, upon reflection, Nguyen Ho deemed it better to swallow it. Quote, "This one, though appearing respectful and obedient on the surface, is in reality extremely cunning. The previous one, though savage, was at least straightforwardly foolish. This one even knows how to feign incompetence. Its donkey face already bears the mark of a treacherous official. It cannot be spared, regardless of how deviously cunning this divine Zhou general might be." One look at its sly donkey eyes told Nguyen Ho it was no benevolent creature. Nguyen Ho took a deep breath and downed the warm, flowing blood. In an instant, blood stained Nguyen Ho's mouth crimson, and his demeanor became even more unsettlingly demonic. Observing his eyes closely, one would see that at the moment he consumed the blood, his pupils had transformed into those of a tiger, striking fear into onlookers. Subsequently, the soul-swallowing ritual, which was initially intended to be merely symbolic, underwent a peculiar transformation due to Nguyen Ho's unique nature. Roar! The tiger spirit within Nguyen Ho's body emerged. After circling him twice, it lunged and bit into the neck of the divine Zhou general. The onlookers could not see the tiger spirit, but the divine Zhou general seemed to perceive something, letting out a shriek before collapsing to the ground. Then, the tiger spirit exerted its strength and pulled a shadowy form from within the general. The tiger spirit chewed on it repeatedly and refined it into a trans soul. It wasn't the anticipated soul summoning technique, but rather a different divine ability. Trans Soul 1000-Mile Night March. This was an exceedingly potent divine ability. Regrettably, it could only be activated while riding the divine Zhou general. And when Nguyen Ho looked back at that divine Zhou general, its eyes had completely lost their spiritual essence, appearing somewhat vacant and clumsy. This highlighted the difference between the divine Zhou general consuming another's soul and another consuming the soul of the divine Zhou general. However, at this moment, Nguyen Ho recalled the Tran ghost. Another Tran soul obtained. If I could use the structure of the 3 Hun and 7 Po souls to piece together a Tran ghost and then fuse it into the body of this divine Zhou general, what kind of changes would occur? He wondered whether this divine Zhou general, transformed into a Tran ghost, would remain as treacherous as before, or perhaps become even more so. Chapter Bay Captain of the Investigation Bureau. Shu Ji Company, secretly known as the Bureau Lord. Recently, he had been relentlessly dispatching spies to Vu Prefecture and Ling Prefecture. Although he couldn't achieve much on the main battlefield, he was determined to make efforts in other areas. Doing so was the only way to make the Son of Heaven value him more, entrusting him with even greater responsibilities. However, the results were minimal. Shu Ji County sat in the main hall. Below him were the left captain, who managed the work of external sleeper agents, the right captain, responsible for analyzing spy intelligence, along with the 3 chief directors and the captains of various departments. All present, It could be said that his hawks and hounds were gathered. A room full of grim reapers, making the entire government office feel like the 18th level of hell. After a long discussion, no one offered any good suggestions. A bunch of rice buckets. Chu Ji County roared, and the crowd of grim reapers, his hawks and hounds, all stood up, trembling with fear, hands clasped, not daring to utter a single word. At this moment, a eunuch walked straight into the main hall and spoke to Chu Ji Ko. "Captain Chu, His Majesty summons you." Chu Ji County glanced at the eunuch, immediately stood up, and followed, though he showed no pleasant expression towards the man. This eunuch was one of Chamberlain Wang Ru's men, and Chu Ji County had recently taken a strong dislike to this Wang Ru. He had heard that this man actually wanted to become his superior. Wishful thinking. Above his head, there was only one sky. His loyalty belonged solely to the sacred Son of Heaven. Chu Ji County entered the palace and, upon seeing Wang Ru, immediately let out a cold snort. HMPH. Despite his outward disdain, Chu Ji County was extremely wary of Wang Ru. This man, without balls. If he couldn't further prove his capabilities and irreplaceability before the Son of Heaven, it was quite possible this ball-less man would indeed climb over his head. Stepping over the high threshold of the palace, Chu Ji Ko's first glance immediately locked onto the figure seated on the left side of the grand hall. However, this time, he didn't walk over but knelt directly. "Your servant pays respects to your majesty." Because this time, he wasn't sure why the Son of Heaven had summoned him. "Nguyen Ho, come and talk." Upon hearing this, Chu Ji Ko's face immediately showed delight. "Indeed, the Son of Heaven still trusts me. How could that Wang Ru compare to me?" But just as he moved forward and knelt on the ground, the Son of Heaven posed a question that struck Chu Ji Ko to his very soul. "Have the sleeper agents you sent to Ling Prefecture arrived yet?" This inquiry was like a superior asking about the progress of a task. Whether it had even begun, Chu Ji County was precisely aiming to prove himself, to surpass that Wang Ru. Hearing these words at this moment, his posture immediately stooped slightly. Yet he dared not fail to answer. "In my haste, your servant only managed to dispatch them. There are no results to show yet. As long as they are there," Nguyen Ho continued, "send a few men to Lingxin." Chu Ji County was stunned at first, but then said instinctively, "Yes." What was called obedience seemed to be gradually engraving itself into his very bones. Nguyen Ho told him about the disloyalty of the garrison commander of Lingxin and the military advisor of Pei Yuanzhao's private army. Chu Ji County was aghast upon hearing this. That Ling prefecture was Pei Yuanzhao's territory. And moreover, it was outside the West City. How could the Son of Heaven know it like the back of his hand? He, the captain of this investigation bureau, had never even heard of this matter. Nguyen Ho looked at Chu Ji Ko's expression and that thought resurfaced in his mind. One flying head Tran ghost was worth how many Chu Ji Kos? But Chu Ji County immediately reacted, saying excitedly, "Your Majesty, this is an opportunity." Nguyen Ho turned away and asked another question. "Can you handle it well?" This gentle question made Chu Ji Ko's hairs stand on end. Alarm bells ringing loudly in his heart. Never mind Chu Ji Ko's earlier roar in the investigation bureau that made everyone tremble, compared to Nguyen Ho. This Son of Heaven, the latter didn't even need to get angry to achieve an effect far exceeding his own. Chu Ji County knelt, kowtowed, and said through gritted teeth, "Your servant will go personally. I will definitely be able to accomplish this task." In the afternoon, Nguyen Ho went to the training grounds again. He began to familiarize himself with the power of this mount. Everything was arranged. There wasn't much else he could do. But this divine Zhuwu army was his next focus. Servants helped him don full body armor. Layer by layer, piece by piece. Finally, only his eyes peered out through the narrow slit of his helmet. Thump, 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 thump. In the distance, a fierce beast galloped over, its 4 hooves pounding the earth, accompanied by a slight tremor. There were other horses and mules around, but compared to this beast, they seemed to be of a different species. That fierce beast was taller than the tallest horse, also clad in armor. At first glance, one might think a Qilin or some mythical creature had charged out. From any angle, it didn't quite resemble a creature of the mortal world. A pity. It's still not a Zuwu. Even at this point, Nguyen Ho still felt a slight regret. However, when he saw the ferocious, armored beast approaching him step by step, exuding a terrifying aura, anticipation surged in Nguyen Ho's heart. Regardless, its appearance didn't seem much different from the Zuwu of myths and legends. After mounting the beast, Nguyen Ho raised his long spear. Previously, he wouldn't have been able to wield this kind of weapon, but now he could brandish it with ease, albeit without any formal technique. But even so, holding the 18-foot-long spear, whether for Nguyen Ho himself or for others facing him mounted on the fierce beast, it brought a distinct sense of awe and trepidation. Nguyen Ho felt his grip tighten on the long spear, and an immense confidence, even a sense of arrogance, welled up within him, making him feel as if he could go anywhere in the world. As for others facing the fully armored man and beast, wielding an 18-foot-long spear, it wasn't something that could simply be described as sending chills down their spines. It was like witnessing a celestial god descended to the mortal realm. And when Nguyen Ho charged, this feeling intensified. The training ground was 200 paces wide from east to west, 300 paces long from north to south, with an earthen platform 5 feet high, and carved flags erected at the four corners. And Nguyen Ho charged from south to north in what seemed like the blink of an eye. When it ran, the sensation it gave was different from an ordinary fine steed. It was like an iron man and iron beast thundering forward, wanting to tear apart and overturn everything. The fearsome-looking spear on horseback thrust forward. It actually pierced a large hole straight through a wooden stake that had been set up. If this blow landed on a person, how could they possibly remain intact? Then Nguyen Ho swung it with the momentum, directly smashing the wooden stake. The others who followed on horseback saw this scene and immediately exclaimed in terror, "Your Majesty's divine might." Although these skilled cavalrymen could tell at a glance that Nguyen Ho's riding skills were exquisite, his combat techniques at this moment were actually quite loose. What everyone said sounded like flattery, but the terror in their hearts was real. At this point, technique, on the contrary, was not important. Full body armor, strength to shatter bricks, one sweep past, man and beast ramming you together. Who cares about your fancy tricks? Besides, you can train technique, but great strength is largely determined by innate talent. Nguyen Ho was still not satisfied. Following the daily training methods of skilled cavalry, he began to ride around the training ground. This training ground utilized the mountain terrain to build a circular track for horses, designed with obstacles such as double wooden fences, battle ditches, and earthen slopes. Nguyen Ho tried riding without armor and experimented with other weapons. But no matter what he held in his hand, riding this divine, exotic steed beneath him, Nguyen Ho looked at anything within his sight, and wanted to charge and knock it down. At this moment, he felt his whole body heat up with restlessness, just wanting to unleash a massacre. No wonder. For a martial artist, the allure of a divine mount could sometimes surpass that of women and power. The exhilarating feeling of dominating the battlefield, using thunderous momentum and lightning-like power to crush enemies, was truly hard to describe. A strong yearning arose in Nguyen Ho's heart. He hoped he too could be like this. But as the son of heaven, opportunities for him to personally go into battle seemed few. That night, Nguyen Ho stayed in the courtyard residence of the imperial stables, and that General Divine Zuwu stood guard outside the main gate of the courtyard complex, acting as a door god. This demonic beast of an exotic breed was still clad in armor, merely sitting cross-legged outside, truly resembling a martial general on guard. Even while sitting, its head almost touched the top of the doorframe. With such a fearsome creature guarding, who would dare approach? At this moment, Nguyen Ho was fiddling with the newly acquired Tran Soul. Tran Soul? Night Journey of 1,000 Li? Can it be used? Nguyen Ho tried it, and something miraculous happened. He himself felt nothing special. But, General Divine Zuwu, guarding the outer courtyard, sensed Nguyen Ho's deep inner desire and immediately let out a call. Clop, clop, clop. Dat. When Nguyen Ho came to his senses, he was already riding on the back of General Divine Zuwu. That General Divine Zuwu was no longer sitting guard outside but had transformed into the posture of a ridden horse, galloping into the distance. This commotion immediately attracted the attention of people outside the government office, who cried out in surprise. What's happening? Why is General Divine Zuwu running? Not good. Quickly stop it. 3 or 4 people ran out, intending to give chase. However, that General Divine Zuwu disappeared in an instant. How could they possibly stop it? Only one of the few pursuers vaguely saw what appeared to be a golden glowing divine figure seated on General Divine Zuwu. But when he rubbed his eyes, General Divine Zuwu had vanished into the darkness, and the golden divine figure was no longer clearly visible. Nguyen Ho used the divine ability of the Trans Soul, Night Journey of 1,000 Li. His spirit roaming while riding General Divine Zuwu. It truly was a journey of 1,000 Li in one night. As fast as lightning. From this ghostly divine perspective, everything around was an expanse of shadows. He could only perceive endless mountains and silent forests. Other things were unclear, and he couldn't tell where he was. Unconsciously, he only felt himself soaring rapidly towards a high place. Yet, at this moment, Nguyen Ho, from his ghostly divine perspective, sensed something else. Above the overlapping high mountains, a hazy, illusory figure of a golden divine being was controlling the exotic divine steed, looking towards an even higher place. That direction. Is that the White Horse High Heaven? White Horse High Heaven was a plateau west of the West City. A truly impoverished land. Nguyen Ho. What is descending from up there? This was the first time Nguyen Ho had used a ghostly divine perspective to gaze at White Horse High Heaven from such a distance. The tiger god within his body seemed to sense something, letting out a roar, and distant scenes appeared layer by layer. He vaguely saw a demonic kingdom, and within that demonic kingdom, a colossal black Buddha statue stood imposing, and behind the black Buddha, countless evil spirits were dancing wildly. That was the divine realm above White Horse High Heaven, a colossal divine system, with countless evil spirits within and without, controlling and enslaving all mortals on White Horse High Heaven. Nguyen Ho observed and was instantly stunned. What the hell is that? So much for the West City's 6 days of lewd ghosts and gods. Sacred forests and poisonous waters where demons wreaked havoc. Looking up, the evil was even greater up there. Behind him, the sun rose. The tiger god within Nguyen Ho gradually calmed, and the distant scenes slowly dissipated. In bed, Nguyen Ho opened his eyes. What he had just seen felt like a nightmare. Nguyen Ho immediately summoned someone and issued an order. Go investigate. Above that White Horse High Heaven, what exactly had descended, causing such a huge commotion? You are listening to the story Demon Emperor on the Great Dragon audio channel. Chapter Tom. A single defeat had compelled the horse-face god to lead all his subordinates away from Nguyen Ho. In the blink of an eye, he reached another den high upon the White Horse Plateau, a position from which he could launch attacks or defend, providing him with at least one sanctuary. Nguyen Ho, you little whelp, this enmity cannot be over. Every time he arrived at a new place, he seemed to repeat this, reminding himself not to forget this feud. This hatred was as vast as a long river. He peeked out from his own altar, clinging to the horsebone idol to spy on the mortal world, only to discover some new faces among the green-faced Chang tribe that worshipped him. Outside, wails and screams filled the air. A group of mounted men circled the green-faced Chang tribe's encampment, while women and children huddled together, trembling. These people had faces and attire clearly different from the green-faced Chang. One glance was enough to tell they were from a foreign tribe. Kneel, kneel, kneel. You are all slaves. I am Long Dat, your new master and chieftain. The nobles among you will have the honor of dedicating yourselves to the revered Mother Goddess. This is your supreme glory. A branch of a foreign tribe from deeper within the White Horse Plateau had conquered them. The original Chang chieftain was dead, and a foreign chieftain named Long Dat had become the master of this place. These outsiders sneered as they seized women and bound up all the able-bodied men. When someone tried to flee, these foreign tribesmen immediately swung their stone-weighted ropes, accurately binding the runner's legs, then chased them down. Afterward, they dragged out all the noblemen of status within the green-faced Chang tribe. They intended to kill all the nobles of the green-faced Chang tribe as sacrifices to the god they worshipped. Just as the Chang had once sacrificed people to the horse-face god. And this Long Dat was no ordinary man. At that moment, as the horse-face god was leaning on the horse bone shrine to spy, he was immediately detected by this man. Who is it? There's a spirit or god prying. Long Dat turned his head and swept his gaze around, his eyes instantly locking onto the horse-face god's position. Then, this foreign chieftain shouted loudly in his native tongue, "Stone-pressing formation." This horse-face god was truly unfortunate. He had just returned only to stumble upon these foreign tribesmen preparing to use the green-faced Chang nobles for a divine sacrifice. Groups of foreign sorcerers and monks, preparing for the sacrificial ceremony, immediately took their positions, forming an exorcism ritual that tightly surrounded the horse-face god. These foreign sorcerers and monks quickly spread out vases painted with scenes of rivers, mountains, palaces, and beasts, then placed human-shaped figurines to the left and right. Immediately after, they piled large stones on top of the vases. The horse-face god instantly felt as if a great mountain was pressing down on him, rendering him immobile. This time, the horse-face god was genuinely terrified. My life is over. Next, the foreign tribe's ritual of live human sacrifice to worship their deity continued. They joined tables together to form a large altar, then covered it with mats from top to bottom. They used colored powders to paint a completely nude human figure with distinct facial features onto a vase. Taking this figure as the center, they then drew concentric circles radiating outwards. They set up idols, offered items of gold, silver, jade, and ivory, and then placed them one by one into a precious and ancient golden urn. A foreign monk stepped forward and lit 3 butter lamps. Then, the cruel sacrificial ceremony began. Amidst tragic screams, a terrifying evil god from the depths of the White Horse Plateau, in an instant, crossed an unknown distance to descend upon this place. Wah 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 wah. The horse-face god first heard the ear-piercing cries of infants, then saw hordes of horrifying infants appear, clinging to the sacrificial array and sucking something from it. They were devouring the blood offerings, enjoying this grand feast of human sacrifice. Next, the main entity appeared. A terrifying shadow slowly coalesced into a human form above the altar. It was a goddess dressed in luxurious, noble attire, yet her aura was dark and reeked of blood. She sat high on the sacrificial altar, observing the horse-face god pinned beneath the pile of stones. This goddess leaned down and sniffed, seemingly recognizing his scent and origin. "You are a subordinate of the great emperor of Fengdu?" Faced with the question of whose subordinate he was, a matter that an ordinary person would answer with pride, the horse-face god only felt immense shame. "I was before, but not anymore." Upon hearing this, the deity showed interest. "Tell me about it." Being in a position of weakness, his life and death in the other's hands, the horse-face god immediately recounted his recent tragic experiences. It was truly heartbreaking for those who heard it, tear-jerking for those who listened. As the horse-face god narrated, he himself was on the verge of tears. That Nguyen Ho is truly the type with boils on his head and pus oozing from his heels. He is the greatest evil in the world. I implore the great god to quickly subdue this demon. Even at this moment, the horse-face god maintained the demeanor of a subordinate of the great emperor of Fengdu, believing himself to be a lofty, righteous god, while others were demons. He failed to realize that he himself had now become a demon, and the deity before him was even more of an evil god. The deity listened with indifference. This horse-face god's failure was a matter of course, nothing worth mentioning. Seeing this, the horse-face god was frightened. afraid this evil god would find him useless, and quickly said, "West City is currently in a state of internal turmoil and external threats. I still have some power and influence in West City and can help your honored god's followers enter West City." Upon hearing this, the deity seemed somewhat interested, yet also somewhat disinterested. She then asked him in return, "Then are you willing to be my child?" The horse-face god was astonished. "What?" The evil god on the altar let out a "Hum?" The demon children at the feet of this malevolent god all looked over. In the darkness, countless pairs of eyes glinted densely, shadows covering the ground. The scene could only be described as utterly terrifying. "You are unwilling?" The horse-face god's body trembled, and he hurriedly said, "Willing, willing." This evil god then threw out something resembling an umbilical cord, which connected to the horse-face god. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The horse-face god felt an intense pain emanating from his divine soul as he struggled beneath the pile of stones. The horse-face god didn't know what this demon child mother god had planted in him. But he knew it was likely a method to bind him, similar to Miaoshang Heavenly Maiden's demon binding silk. She said, "I am the demon child mother god. From this day forward, you are my child." The horse-face god, who once aspired to be the emperor's steed. At this moment, his power dwindling, he had lost all spirit and dignity. The evil god on the altar glowed, and also released him from the pile of stones. Seeing the horse-face god make no move, the evil god's gaze shifted. "The demon child mother god, I have accepted you. What should you call me?" The horse-face god reacted immediately. He prostrated himself before the altar, and with sincere devotion, cried out loudly, "Mother, a loving mother and a filial son, what a beautiful picture. A once high and mighty local righteous god in his temple. A horse demon who just the day before reluctantly bowed his head to others. Today was a horse prostrating on the ground, calling, 'Mother,' with sincere devotion. No one would have expected the once majestic and renowned honored horse-face god, who presided in his temple, to end up in such a state." Imperial stables. Nguyen Ho was not in battle today but was watching 5 Chang slaves riding old demon donkeys, galloping across the sandy training grounds. These Chang slaves were clad in armor, wielding cavalry lances, moving as fast as the wind, proficient in all sorts of combat techniques. More importantly, these Chang slaves were ferocious and unafraid of death, even when sparring with each other. They fought with all their might, without any hesitation. Looking closely at the eyes of these Chang slaves, they appeared somewhat vacant. These individuals were Chang slaves whose souls had been devoured by the silver-headed donkeys, the very same ones Chen Guang had offered along with his only daughter when Nguyen Ho previously visited the Chen family's Stone Bridge Manor. It appeared as if the Chang slaves were riding horses, but in reality, the old demon donkeys were in complete control. When charging into battle, those malicious old demon donkeys showed no restraint, deliberately ramming into others with their bodies, trampling them with iron hooves, and even intentionally using the sharp horns on their head armor to stab at the enemy. If this thing were on a battlefield, it would truly be a meat grinder. And beside Nguyen Ho, General Shen Zhou, Great Mountain, fully armored, sat cross-legged like a human, the one controlling everything, truly formidable. "We must quickly equip this Shen Zhou army fully." The more Nguyen Ho watched, the more his heart itched. This white bone god's Shen Zhou army was indeed too useful. But elite cavalry was truly not easy to assemble. West City had few cavalry to begin with, and the little that remained had all been taken away by Yuchi Chongwu. Moreover, this Shen Zhou army controlled cavalry by devouring souls. Although Nguyen Ho was ruthless, he couldn't bear to turn the true sons of West City into demon slaves for this demonic creature. "If only someone could give me another troop of elite cavalry." Nguyen Ho concluded the training session, preparing to leave. At this moment, a eunuch beside him received news, slowly walked up behind Nguyen Ho, knelt, and presented a secret missive. The matter he had previously instructed about now had a response. At the same time, the eunuch said urgently, "Your Majesty, A group of foreign tribesmen and Chang tribesmen from the White Horse Plateau have descended the mountain, and have also allied with a faction of the Nanjiao people. Currently, they are gathering along the Kwa River. Their intentions unknown. The informant was not a spy from the Investigation Bureau, nor the magistrate of Rang County, but rather news obtained by the Chen family's merchant caravan. The elite cavalry had indeed arrived. It was just that there were a few too many. Chapter Chen Nguyen Ho wished to establish the Divine Beast Army, and now the opportunity had truly arrived. Upon hearing the news, Nguyen Ho immediately returned to the palace. The news had been relayed by the Chen family's merchant caravan. Although the letter didn't confirm whether those people were targeting him, Nguyen Ho was already certain of it in his heart. Unable to grasp the situation externally, Nguyen Ho currently had to ascertain the situation on his own side. Thus, he immediately summoned someone to inquire about the situation in Rang District. What is the situation in Rang District? Furthermore, what is the situation with the Flying Cavalry Division over there? The one who arrived was Vice Minister of War, Lu Wenli, who then detailed the situation in Rang District. Vice Minister of War Lu Wenli, there. The truly usable and battle-hardened soldiers number only about 1,000 rattan armored soldiers within the city, along with the Flying Cavalry Division. The rest are merely local militias and civilian braves from various places. Nguyen Ho asked again, specifically, how many men does the Flying Cavalry Division have? Lu Wenli. The total number is around 800, 500 light cavalry, 300 auxiliary soldiers, 500 war horses, 200 reserve horses, and also 100 pack horses. The vast majority of the soldiers are recruited from the Qingmian Zhang people. Commandant Chishan is arrogant and unruly, difficult to control. Nguyen Ho remembered this well. He had previously tried to mobilize this Flying Cavalry Division. This Chishan had claimed the rewards were insufficient and even wanted to bring troops to the walls of Zijing to demand rewards from him. This son of heaven, quite formidable, Nguyen Ho said indifferently. It was unclear whether he was genuinely praising or mocking. Vice Minister Lu Wenli immediately bowed his head, remaining silent. What about recently? Have there been any unusual movements? Lu Wenli, after Your Majesty issued the decree, I instructed all posts to continuously monitor them. There have been no unusual movements. Nguyen Ho thought to himself. It seems that Horse-Face God hasn't contacted these people yet, and they are even less aware of what specific changes have occurred within the Divine Way. In fact, ever since Nguyen Ho learned of the relationship between the Qingmian Zhang people and the Horse-Face God, he had ordered his men to closely monitor this Flying Cavalry Division and Commandant Chishan. But Rang District was not comparable to Zijing. The situation there was very complex. The relationships between the Zhang, Yu, Fan, and Liao peoples were tangled and difficult to unravel, with many personal connections intertwined. If he directly issued an order to arrest this Flying Cavalry Division, it might not necessarily succeed. And to arbitrarily kill those people without a valid reason was even more likely to cause a chain reaction. So Nguyen Ho had always refrained from taking action. You may leave. I take my leave. Inside the Zi-Chen Hall, Nguyen Ho still could not sleep peacefully, thinking about this tangled mess of a situation. Where should I begin? These times, truly, allowed no one any peace. Nguyen Ho had just sent people to stab Pei Yuanzhao in the back. And now, turning around, he himself was about to be attacked on two fronts. It was truly so. The way of the world turns, and retribution is exact. Late at night, the innermost sanctum of this Zi-Chen Hall usually had no female attendants on night duty. But at this moment, a group of individuals with a different, special status existed. Thump, the surface of the illusory and ethereal mirror rippled, and one by one, heavenly maidens, each carrying a lantern, stepped out from the mirror. After inspecting the surroundings, they patrolled towards the heavenly palace within the mirror. And Nguyen Ho, lost in thought, tilted his head and saw the white bone god standing guard by a pillar. Seeing her, Nguyen Ho asked, "Are you on night duty today?" Being asked this by Nguyen Ho, the white bone god's ears turned red for some reason. Looking at the white bone god, an idea suddenly sparked in Nguyen Ho's mind. That night, Nguyen Ho let down his hair and asked that white bone god, "Do you think I look like him?" The white bone god observed him meticulously, then shook her head. "Not very similar." Nguyen Ho had someone bring a robe of a ghost god, then put it on, and turned his head to look at Whitebone. Whitebone said, somewhat reluctantly, "About 50% similar." Immediately after, Nguyen Ho put on a horse-shaped mask, looked towards Whitebone again, who nodded at him. The Whitebone god said, "About 70% similar." It seemed that 70% similarity was perhaps the limit. Nguyen Ho looked around, then pulled the Whitebone god into his embrace and walked to the mirror. In the mirror, the Whitebone god shyly squirmed in Nguyen Ho's arms. Nguyen Ho asked him, "How about now?" The Whitebone god didn't dare to look at herself in the mirror, yet said with utmost certainty, "Now it's a perfect match." It was unknown whether she was telling the truth or deceiving Nguyen Ho. However, it was worth a try. During the night, a strange incident occurred at the imperial stables. The supervisor of the imperial stables suddenly threw open the main gates. And then all the silver-furred donkeys inside abruptly left, following that divine beast general in a stream towards the mountains and wilderness. Just like when they had arrived. Rang District, Flying Cavalry Division Barracks. Today, Commandant Chishin's mood seemed to be very poor because he had received news that the useless dog emperor seemed to suspect him. Not only had he dispatched him and the Flying Cavalry Division to such a place, but he had also sent people to monitor him and cut off his supplies. Inside the barracks, in front of everyone, Chishin spoke bluntly, without any restraint, "What's there to suspect about me? Is there even a need for suspicion?" Hearing this, it sounded like absolute loyalty. Then, this Chishin's words took a turn. "If that dog emperor doesn't pay up, tomorrow I'll rebel and go to Zijing to rob him." As soon as these words were spoken, the soldiers in the barracks burst into laughter one by one. Many of these soldiers had tattoos on their faces, and they were green. At a glance, it felt as if they were blue-faced, tusked demons, if they charged together on horseback. This ferocious appearance could also bring even greater intimidation and pressure. This Chishin carried himself with an air of looking down on everyone, his eyes higher than his head. The only one he worshipped was that horse-face god. If the horse-face god gave the order, telling him to kill that emperor, it was feared he wouldn't hesitate in the slightest. After showing off in front of everyone, Chishin drank a lot of wine and fell asleep in broad daylight. In a daze, he smelled a fragrance, and then heard a strange series of sounds. Ee, ha. It seemed to be the braying of a horse. This Commandant Chishin sensed something, suddenly turned over and sat up, his fierce gaze scanning the surroundings. Immediately, his eyes locked onto the idol on the wooden altar enshrined on the wall. Chishin was aghast, exclaiming, "Horse King?" The moment he said these words, Chishin was agitated. Could it be that the god is summoning me? In fact, Chishin had recently heard some news. It was estimated that a major event was about to occur within the tribe. Not only that, but a major event was also happening in Xicheng. That Wanshu man in the east was causing a lot of trouble. Grand General of the Pillar State Pei Yuanzhao was still watching intently. And whether this son of heaven of Great Sheng could sit securely on his throne were two different matters. A great event must have happened for the Horse King to manifest for me. Chishin wasn't afraid of major events happening, he was only afraid of nothing happening. In these times, how could one make a name for oneself if nothing happened? It would be best if this Xicheng fell into complete chaos, beaten until heaven and earth were overturned. Following the sound, this Commandant Chishin of the Flying Cavalry Division followed. He trod over jagged rocks, past steep slopes, and then saw the distant old forest. Faintly, he saw a divine figure in the quiet forest, riding a strange beast, looking at him from afar. Horse-face god? The wind suddenly rose, and mist enveloped the mountainside at night. In the wind, it seemed a goddess was speaking, like a mountain spirit asking him, "You have seen the Emperor Sovereign. Why do you not bow?" And then, in the forest, pairs of eerie, Inhuman eyes lit up. They were all silver-furred donkey demons. Densely packed. Staring at this Zhang man, Commandant Chishan instantly felt a shiver run from the soles of his feet to the back of his head. Finally, without any hesitation, he prostrated himself on the ground, respectfully submitting and shouting loudly, "Chishan pays respects to the divine master." The white bone god appeared beside that divine figure, nestling into that person's embrace, and ordered Chishan in an ancient tone, "Cut the hair from your crown and offer it to the emperor sovereign." Chishan was overcome with emotion. He thought to himself that this must be a great change under heaven. The god wanted to place a bet on him. The great undertaking is today. With divine protection, did he also have a chance to distinguish himself in this chaotic world? Then, Chishan kowtowed and said, "Yes." Chishan drew out a dagger and forcefully cut the hair from his crown. Fresh blood trickled down from his scalp. This commandant trembled, but without any hesitation, he crawled forward, came before that divine figure, and held up the tuft of hair from his crown under the head of that ferocious, strange beast. Nay, an old donkey demon beside them directly swallowed the tuft of hair from Commandant Chishan's crown, chewing and swallowing vigorously, as if eating grass. Only then did Chishan dare to vaguely raise his head, somewhat assessing the silhouette of that divine figure. The fragrance in his nostrils was still there, seeming to emanate from something the white bone god was holding. However, as Commandant Chishan looked at the appearance of that divine figure, he vaguely felt that something was amiss. This isn't right. Who is it? Only then did Chishan begin to react. Just now, the white bone god had said, "Emperor sovereign." What did this mean? But that white bone god was clearly the real white bone god. How could the one beside the white bone god not be the god he worshipped? What on earth is going on? Chishan couldn't figure it out. His mind felt a bit sluggish. But by now, it was too late. Or rather, when he had come to this place, it was already too late. A film gradually covered Chishan's eyes. He felt his consciousness becoming muddled. The eyes of that grotesque, fierce donkey before him grew larger and larger. In his world of consciousness, the donkey eyes were like two dazzling suns in the sky, staring at his soul. When he raised his head again, he was kneeling before this old donkey demon, obediently. And when Nguyen Ho, riding the divine beast general, advanced, he bowed his head even lower to the ground in prostration, completely unable to resist. Nguyen Ho pointed into the distance and said, quote, "Go." His target was not this single commandant, but the entire flying cavalry division. Or rather, it was to recreate the divine beast army, using these Zhang people as a sacrifice. The sky had not yet completely darkened. Commandant Chishan returned to the barracks and summoned all the unit commanders under him. He wore a helmet to cover the shorn hair on his crown, sat in the head seat, and ordered those below, "Tonight, a martial arena offering to the god. To show our sincerity, do not wear armor." You have just finished listening to episode 10 of the audiobook, Demon Emperor, at Great Dragon Audio Channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest updates. Thank you so much.